What is going on, YouTube? We are just 2 weeks away from Founder 500 in Austin, Texas on September 1st and 2nd. There's over 500 B2B SaaS founders all coming together. You don't want to miss it. Ticket prices increase every 3 days. I have it on an automatic accelerator every 3 days, and we're almost sold out. You can see there's about 9 left when you go to the Eventbrite link, about 9 left, and it's updating real time. So check it out today. It's founderpath.com. And then in the upper left, you can hover over our product drop down and click the event stream. I'll also put it in the description here of the YouTube video. I'd love to see you there. Hey folks, my guest today is Alex Quilici. He's the CEO of YouMail. Before that, he co-founded and was the CEO of Quack.com, which provided a consumer voice portal service that was essentially Siri over a 1-800 number back before there were even smartphones. AOL acquired Quack for $200 million in August 2000, and just 18 months after it was founded. Impressive short life cycle there. And at AOL, he was vice president of voice services, where he helped drive the division to multiple product launches and over 1 million paying subscribers and over $50 million in annual revenue. Today, he's building YouMail, which helps you stop spam calls and messages. Alex, you ready to take us to the top?
I am. Let's go.
All right. Now, I love this. When I had you back on in early 2019, you had an ARPU. You remember that what you told me? You had an ARPU of about $12 a month on average. You were B2C only. What has changed?
So the biggest thing is YouMail wants to stop spam calls either before they get to the consumer's handset, or even better, when they're actually made. So we've created products that enable carriers to monitor their network and detect when they're originating these bad guy calls. And we've created tools that allow enterprises to shut down imposter scams. You know, those calls you get that pretend to be Marriott or pretend to be your bank.
So when you say, so carrier would be AT&T. So you help AT&T monitor their networks to prevent these like bad guy calls or these fake Marriott hotel, fake social security calls.
Actually, it's not AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon, the carriers that are interesting here, because they're not really responsible for making the calls. It turns out most people don't know there's almost 3,000 wholesale carriers in the US. And those carriers can provide things like hospital, telephony. They can provide international telephony. They can provide call center telephony. They provide all these different ways to make phone calls. Well, the bad guys just abuse many of those carriers, and sometimes they don't even know it. And so we try to help them discover when that's happening. What's that?
Can you name one or two of those?
Sure. There's like Airstream is an example of a wholesale carrier that provides services for enterprises. But, bad guys can use their network. There's tons of them. The way to find the full list is go to the FCC. They have something called a Form 499 that you have to file if you're a carrier. There's the list.
Interesting. Okay, so let's just get the backstory though. So in 2019, what were consumers paying you for?
So they were paying us for essentially robocall blocking and privacy protection, as well as second phone lines that were robocall free and had a number of business phone features. That was the consumer model.
Now, these notes could be wrong, so feel free to correct me, but my notes say that you had about $12 a month per customer. You had about 65,000 customers, right?
Yeah, that's spot on.
Okay, so multiply there. You were doing like almost a $10 million run rate B2C back then, right?
Pretty close. That's right.
So, I would say that's a pretty successful B2C company. Why pivot at all? What did you realize?
Well, we realized that the carriers and the enterprises needed help. They're willing to pay up for that help. If you're an enterprise and someone's using your name in making tons of imposter phone calls to rip people off, that not only gives you customer support costs, but it causes brand damage. And you may even have to reimburse those people as a form of goodwill. So there's tremendous damage there that they're willing to pay a portion of to stop the problem. And enterprises are not $12. They're not $120 a month. They're substantially larger when you can find and get these contracts successfully. Carriers are the same way.
That's really interesting. And just to build up the backstory before we focus the rest of the interview on the enterprise motion today, do you remember what year you passed? I know you launched in 2007, but what year did you pass $1 million in annual revenue?
That was a while ago. That was probably 2009, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you went from 0 to $1 million in about 2 years.
Yep, that's correct. In fact, we did it in about 11 months because we were a completely free service. We're running out of money. We needed a business model, and we quickly pivoted, found a subscription, and got to $1 million.
Oh, what's going on there, YouTube? Good to see you guys. Now imagine this. You love watching these interviews with SaaS founders, but imagine if we took all of the valuation data out from over 2,807 interviews I've done manually. Saves you a lot of time. Well, we've done this. We've built it into the beautiful interface inside of FounderPath. Check this out. I'll show you how you can access this in a second, but you log in, you connect your Stripe account, you see your valuation real time, you can see what it changed over the past 88 days, and even set goals for valuation this year. Now, the secret to valuation is there's many different ways to value a SaaS business. So the reason you're going to see 3 or 4 different valuations inside of your FounderPath dashboard, this is all free by the way, is because depending on who's doing the buying of your SaaS company, you're going to get a different valuation. A VC is going to pay a different valuation. Private equity firm is different. If you're going to do a minority sale, that's different. And if you sell the whole business, that's a different valuation. You can see all those when I hover over here. Right, so the teal is what a VC would pay, yellow is what private equity, and red is if you sold the whole thing outright. Now, what's cool about this is not built off random data. Again, you guys hear these interviews on YouTube. All these data are built from real-time valuation data points founders share with us on the show. So traction, 1.2 million, seed round, 3.7 raise, they sold 22% of their business. Go in here and filter by the event. Maybe you only want to see companies that have sold the whole business. Well, here are a bunch that have been acquired, the valuation and the multiple. Maybe you're going out right now and you're raising your seed round. Well, go in here and look at all this recent seed deals that went down, what they raised, what valuation they raised at, and what percent that they sold. There's never been a larger data set of SaaS valuations than what you can get now inside of FounderPath, and we're thrilled to bring it to you. All right, we're going to go back to the YouTube video here in a second, but if you want to check this tool out, if you want to jump in and sign up, you can check it out for free to get your valuation at this link, founderpath.com/products/valuations. Or if you go to founderpath.com and hover over products, click on get your valuation here, and go ahead and sign up to give it a whirl. Again, all that valuation data live right inside the platform. I hope to see you there. All right, let's jump back into the interview. That's amazing. You bootstrapped or have you raised?
So it was an interesting company. I actually came in not as the founder, but as an early investor. They'd raised a couple million in angel money before I even got there. I came in as a board member and I helped them raise VC funding, and then I became the CEO. So we're a company that has VC funding. And then we also did a crowdsourced round in 2015, which was really transformative for us.
How the hell do you keep a cap table clean with all this going on?
Well, you don't at first, but we keep it as clean as we can. And, one of the things is, even in a crowdfunding round, we didn't go after the $1,000 investor. We went after the 50,000 plus investor. So that doesn't add too many new people to the pool, even if you raise a few $1 million.
I see. Okay. So I guess maybe just let's get the most up-to-date data. So what was the last round? When did you raise it? And was it your Series B or C or what?
So the last round was a Series B and it was 2015. So since then, we've been acting like a bootstrap company. We try to keep, break even is roughly where we run. Sometimes we'll lose a little money as a project to help spur growth, but we've been growing all that growth as a break even company.
Well, that's okay. So last round, just to be clear, it was 5 million or 15 million?
It was 5 million in 2015.
Yeah, which is maybe a big round for 2015. And maybe, today markets are now correcting, but okay. So 5 million Series B. And I guess including the 5 million, what's the total you raised today, including crowdfunding?
So we've raised a little over $15 million in our history. But what's important to know is Umail was several different companies. It started off as a voicemail for carrier company and ran out of runway trying to sell to carriers, which turns out to be pretty difficult, right? If you're trying to help them do something that affects consumers. We then got stuck around for about 4 or 5 years where we were embroiled in a bunch of lawsuits over a feature we had. They were all dismissed. We pivoted to a call blocking company, raised the 5 million. And that's really how we view Umail now, is we've done almost everything with the 5 million.
What year did you officially come in as CEO?
I came in 2007, 2008. So very early in the life cycle.
Yeah. So you're basically day one.
I've been through the first wave of trying to take a strategy someone else had and executing it with carriers, seeing that fail, transitioning to a consumer company, seeing that struggle because of lawsuits and other challenges, and then pivoting to a call blocking company. And now we're pivoting again, but to some degree to be call blocking for carriers and enterprises, not just consumers.
A lot of founders listening today are doing ambitious things that sometimes run into sort of like legal issues, right? Competitors just trying to be nasty and sue them because they're early to kill them. You won that battle. I mean, how give us some kind of how much did you spend on legal bills back in the day, and like how much time and energy did it take? How did you get the team like morale high to make it through that?
So it was pretty ugly. We had 4 class action lawsuits over a feature we had where if you called me, it would automatically send you a text back saying, I'm busy, go to my website, send me an email, whatever the user wanted. That was called auto reply. People said, oh, that's violating TCPA, and sued the founders personally, right? And the executive team personally, as well as the company. It took 3 years and about $250,000 to get out of that mess. Ultimately, the FCC found we were doing nothing wrong. We were actually innovation that they like to see. If someone calls, they're giving you permission to call them back. That was essentially it.
Totally.
And so that was extremely draining. The team stuck with it because we believed in the vision. Even in 2012, 2013, we saw call blocking coming. We started our first, variants of our features to make that easier. And once we got done with the lawsuit, then we were able to raise the crowdfunding round, and the rest is sort of history. Everybody's really glad they stuck around because we're making such a huge difference now.
No, this makes tons of sense. Really interesting story. Okay, now let's fast forward to sort of present day. So what are you selling today? What's the average enterprise paying when they sign up per year, and what are they getting for that?
So, they're paying what a typical enterprise pays, which means, 5 digits, but we can't talk about all the details, obviously. So it can be somewhere in that range. That's kind of
about like $10,000 a year is fair, right?
What's that?
You have customers paying more than $10,000 a year.
Yeah, for sure. That's the enterprise, and then carriers are similar. And what they get, what an enterprise gets for that is if there's somebody out there that's being an imposter, that's pretending to be them, we will let them know how many of those calls are out there, and we will shut them down. And so we will make it so those guys can't pop up. If they pop up again, we whack them. And so that's a really great business because it essentially protects the enterprise's brand reputation, protects their call centers, and protects just random people from harm from a given imposter thinking it's whoever that enterprise is.
Mm-hmm. Did you just let the 65,000 B2C customers churn off, or like how many customers are you serving today?
Actually, it's grown a bit. The thing is, the B2C business is critical for us. They're a sensor network that tells us what's going on with scam calls. So everybody who has Umail is contributing to the fight to stop robocalls. There's data about this illegal call hit this person and left this message pretending to be, say, Amazon. That's extremely valuable for the enterprise side of the business because we have all this data we can use that tells us here's exactly what's going on. Here's where those calls are coming from. And here's how we get rid of them. Same with the carrier. So if there's a wholesale carrier, we can look at what's coming from their network and show them here's the illegal activity that's hitting our pool of consumers. So in our case, the B2C business is the critical enabler that allows us to have a differentiated B2B solution.
And so I guess let me just split it up then, right? So how many B2C customers do you have now today? Critical part of your network.
So B2C customers, we've had 10 million people sign up for Umail. And so a significant number of them are active every month as free users, plus the paid users. So that's the size of the network. It's literally hundreds and hundreds of millions of phone calls coming into us.
That's great. What I'm trying to measure is how successful you've been converting 10 million free or active, which you still get value from because they're alerts in your ecosystem. But how successful have you been converting those folks into paid? Is it still about 65, 70,000 paid?
Yeah, it's in that ballpark. It's grown a little bit. We actually focused on increasing ARPU rather than trying to grow that base. So get more money from the pool as opposed to make the pool bigger. That was the right thing to do, I think, during COVID times. But the data we've collected is fantastic because the free business keeps growing. We keep getting more and more people in there, and eventually they convert.
You've touched on enterprise motion with $10,000 ACVs, but we were before talking about a B2C motion of $144 a year or $12 a month. To your point, with 70,000 customers, if you increase ARPU by $10 a year across 70,000 customers, that moves the needle for your business. That's adding almost $1 million of new ARR. You haven't talked about what products you've started selling more into the B2C range to increase that ARPU by a couple dollars every year. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So one of the things we did is we have a product called Umail Plus, which is our privacy protection offering. What we did to that offering is we added something where we can guarantee you won't get robocalls. 100% no robocalls are going to get through. That's something that consumers found worthwhile. And that enabled us to move from a $4.99 ARPU for that particular product up to where it looks like it's $5.99, $6.99, even with discounting. and with annual plans. And so it was creating a better value proposition. It was one thing we'll block most of them. We'll give you some customization. It's another thing to say, nope, we guarantee it. We're going to block every single robocall. There's no way a robocaller is going to get through. And when we were able to deliver on that promise, we're seeing that churn goes down and we can charge more.
That's amazing. Okay, that's the B2C side. How many folks on the B2, paying on the B2B side today? Are we talking like a handful, 10, 20, or more like 1,000?
No, we're in the 20-ish range, I think, somewhere in that ballpark. It's something that started with one paying customer 2 years ago. And so that's pretty good to get that kind of growth. And I think we're going to see it double or more in the next year, just at the pace it's going.
But I guess, so then just to be clear, if we if you look at your full, like all your revenue from last year on a percent basis, the majority is still B2C versus B2B.
Yep, I'd say 80-20 is a rough approximation of where we've gotten to, somewhere in that ballpark. I think if you look out 2 years, it's going to be the other way around. And we can see it for 3 years, it's going to move to, probably 40% B2C, 60% B2B, and go from there. So consumers growing steadily, but slowly. B2B is doubling every year or more.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit more about your team here. How many folks are full-time today?
So we have 30 full-time employees, but the really interesting story is that during COVID, we were able to take advantage of remote work, which enabled us to hire people all over the world, including as contractors. So the total team size is approaching 70, but a lot of that are people who work on a contract basis. And we found that's a really efficient way for us to get development done, get certain kinds of marketing done, do customer support. You don't need to have an employee sitting in California. They can be somebody at home in Jamaica and be just as good at doing customer support.
Okay, everyone wants the playbook to using contractors. Someone's going to build $1 billion business and have one FTE as the founder, and then a network of contractors. So you got to teach us here. I mean, who are you using for development, and how did you find them?
Well, so the really key thing for us is that we have a core development team. We aren't outsourcing it 100%. What we wanted to do was find support for tasks like maintenance or relatively simple tasks that don't require a really complicated skill set. If you're fixing iPhone bugs, that's completely different than if you're building an iPhone UI from scratch. You're building complicated data manipulations. That's a different group. So we contract out a lot of what I would say is the easier stuff. And it was through our network. We found someone who basically built a contracting firm in Asia who knows how to pull people together with the skills we want and has been able to staff up and down as we need.
It's amazing. Really What's the name? What's the name of that? Can you share the name of that company in Asia?
It's actually a person. It's an individual who's one of our friends, one of our contacts.
Oh, so it's not like a network that anyone can go use.
No, it's we got lucky that we were looking for someone. We found this guy to help us, who developed for us. And he said, I have a whole network of people I can bring in. And we just went from there.
What about support?
What's that?
Contractors, support. How do you find the support contractors?
So again, that was a contact from our past who'd done that for another company. He actually had done it for a company called Line 2, which was a second phone line, and it built up a remote supply through essentially an agent who knew how to pull everybody together in Jamaica and knew how to evaluate customer support. So we put that together, leveraged him, and now the team's 15, 20, something like that, of just those contractors there. And they do a terrific job.
That's answering the live chat on the website, phone
calls.
Live chat
on the website, emails, phone calls, phone support, all of that.
Nice. If I wanted to use them, are you open to me reaching out?
Yeah, if you send me an email, I think I want to be careful about having a zillion people contact him. But yeah, he's perfectly happy to build support teams up for people. He's very
amazing. Good. Okay, and then lastly, marketing. How do you find marketing contractors that know what they're doing?
So it's kind of the network effect there too. So there's a lesson here, right? So in our network, we had one person who's been kind of an outsourced CMO for a variety of companies. We brought him in to help us with strategy, positioning, a whole set of things. And he'd start going, well, you guys really need help here. I know somebody. Let's bring them in as a contract for 20 hours a week and work on something. I know somebody else, and gradually built that up. And then we've been hiring people too. Like some of the contractors have become full-time because they really like working with us. Mm-hmm. But when you start out, your online marketing guy doesn't have to be 40 hours a week. Your online marketing guy can be 10 hours a week to run a limited set of campaigns and tests that they're trying to do to advertise your B2C stuff. So we found the contractor model really, really works, but it's because we have trusted people who are bringing them in. We have not just gone to a random firm who's contacted me on LinkedIn and said, yeah, let's outsource development. And so it's about building your network, right? And I think it's really critical to build up a good network that you can then leverage for this sort of stuff.
That makes tons of sense. Now, in terms of size of business, say again, if you're doing 10 million in ARR back in 2019 or around there with 65,000 B2C customers, it sounds like you've grown that maybe up to 70,000. You increased ARPU a little bit. So maybe that takes you to 12. And then you have a little bit, maybe called a million or so coming in through the B2B side. Are you sort of in that like 12 to 14 million ARR range today?
Let's put it this way. I'm probably going to get fired if I'm not hitting 15 by somewhere about the middle of next year at least. So your estimate's not bad.
Fair. Well, so let me ask you this question. I mean, you raised Series B back in 2015. Those folks, this isn't a knock on you or anything, but they've written this investment off, right? It hasn't tripled every year, which is ridiculous anyway. But that's what you sign up for when you do VC. So, I mean, can you buy those early folks out, clean up the cap table, and get more of this bad boy back? Or if not, why not sell the business and move on to the next thing?
So, the thing is, the value we've created in the last couple of years exceeds everything we created in the first, 10, 12 years of doing this. So the whole point about when do you want to sell out, when do you want to, try to buy out investors is when do you think you've hit the point where you can get a really good return for them and you're probably not going to do better over time. If we'd sold this thing in 2018, the business was kind of flat, growing slowly. We hadn't completed our transition. It would be completely uninteresting to get a 2x or maybe even lucky a 3x on 5 million in revenue, right? Nobody's happy. Now we're growing at a good clip. Everybody can look out a couple of years and go, well, if you keep that up, this is going to be a 9-digit plus business when it goes. Why would I jump out now? And so it's a bit of a sunk cost fallacy people have, right? Because this is kind of the opposite, which is this isn't going anywhere. It's never going to go anywhere in the future. You can't make that conclusion. You have to look at where it is now and say, what's going on? What's the evidence this is going to succeed or fail?
Well, but it's less about you. It's more about those funds. Those funds that wrote a check in 2015, where the life cycles of a fund is 10 years, those funds are almost dead. Like those fund life cycles are almost dead relative to like what you're building now. So it's less about you. It's just more about timing on the VC side.
Well, and the interesting thing is there's mostly crowdsourced individuals, and individuals are patient, right? If you put 50,000 in or 100,000 in, you're fine with taking your time to see that turn into something big. If it can turn into a million over 7, 8, 10 years, you're happy. We do have some institutions, and they, of course, always look for ways to kind of get out or trade. But, they know that this is growing now. So some of them are sitting there going, okay, well, this isn't bad. We stuck around and didn't try to force something.
Well, if you want to buy out your investors, we have $145 million of fresh capital. This is one of the top use cases, how we're working with bootstrappers or almost bootstrapping. We give them $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, $6 million bucks. They go buy out the early folks and they own more equity.
So the one I love debt. So we took some debt a couple of years ago in order to accelerate growth. We said, we're going to burn some money for a little bit. We have a very specific plan. We're going to build this B2B thing. We took some debt. The challenge with debt is always you've got to pay it back. And that actually is money you cannot spend on growing your business. So
how long did you have to pay it back?
So we have 3 years to pay a couple million in debt back, a little bit more than that.
And you weren't able to add, that's 3 years is still a long time. You weren't able to take the upfront cash and add enough MRR to more than cover the interest payments over 3 years. We're
looking at various strategies here, right? We want to figure out what to do. And so that there are possibilities. We're always getting approached by people saying, hey, we'll give you $5 million. You can do this, and that with it. But we're a little bit conservative because we think, well, if the B2B business grows at the rate it's growing, it makes a lot more sense to do this 6 months or a year from now because there's plenty of EBITDA to cover it.
Yeah.
It's a tough call. Are you profitable? Everybody has to balance growth versus, how much they want to burn.
You're profitable today?
Yeah, we're running break even, deliberately break even to maximize growth.
Yep, that makes sense. Very cool. Great story here, Alex. Let's wrap up with the famous 5. Number 1, favorite book.
My favorite book is Still Free by, I think it's Chris Anderson from like 10, 15 years ago.
Yep. Number 2, is there a CEO you're following or studying?
Well, like everybody else, Elon Musk, I think he's just awesome. And I love the fact he's so honest about everything. He has no filter. And I think more CEOs need to be like that.
Number 3, what's your favorite online tool for building UMail?
My favorite online tool for building UMail, it's really interesting. It's actually Slack now because communication is so critical to the business working, especially when you go remote.
Number 4, what's your favorite? How many hours of sleep do you get every night?
I'm actually getting 7.5 now. My doctor told me I better. I used to get 6, and that was
awesome. What's your situation? Married, single, kids?
I'm married, 2 kids, both now are going to be in high school. So I'm kind of aging out.
That's amazing. How old are you?
I'm not saying publicly. It's one of those things that's too embarrassing with all the kids listening.
That's fair enough. Okay. Last question. Something you wish you knew when you were 20.
I really wish I started being an entrepreneur earlier in life rather than later in life. And I didn't realize how satisfying it is as a career. Even if you hit wall after wall, when you finally don't hit a wall, it's just a wonderful feeling to make an impact.
Guys, Umail started off helping consumers block robocalls on their personal phones, built up 65,000 paying customers at $12 a month and 10 million in ARR around there back in 2019. The business has been sort of flat since then. However, they now have a B2B play that with 20 enterprise customers on there with higher ACVs, call it 10 grand a year, scaling nicely. And in his own words, quote, I'll be fired in the next 12 months if I don't break 15 million bucks in ARR. We're obviously rooting for you. Alex, thanks for taking us to the top.
All right. Thank you.
One more thing before you go. We have a brand new show every Thursday at 1 p.m. Central. It's called Shark Tank for SaaS. We call it Deal or Bust. One founder comes on, 3 hungry buyers, they try and do a deal live, and the founder shares back-end dashboards, their expenses, their revenue, ARPU, CAC, LTV, you name it, they share it. And the buyers try and make a deal live. It is fun to watch every Thursday, 1 p.m. Central. Additionally, remember, these recorded founder interviews go live. We release them here on YouTube every day at 2 p.m. Central. To make sure you don't miss any of that, make sure you click the subscribe button below here on YouTube, the big red button, and then click the little bell notification to make sure you get notifications when we do go live. I wouldn't want you to miss breaking news in the SaaS world, whether it's an acquisition, a big fundraise, a big sale, a big profitability statement, or something else. I don't want you to miss it. Additionally, if you want to take this conversation deeper and further, we have by far the largest private Slack community for B2B SaaS founders. You want to get in there. We've probably talked about your tool if you're running a company or your firm if you're investing. You can go in there and quickly search and see what people are saying. Sign up for that at nathanlatka.com/Slack. In the meantime, I'm hanging out with you here on YouTube. I'll be in the comments for the next 30 minutes. Feel free to let me know what you thought about this episode. And if you enjoyed it, click the thumbs up. We get a lot of haters that are mad at how aggressive I am on these shows, but I do it so that we can all learn. We have to counter those people. We got to push them away. Click the thumbs up below to counter them and know that I appreciate your guys' support. All right, I'll be in the comments. See ya.